Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The wine was good, too good, maybe. Or maybe it was just the way the conversation had shifted. We were two couples sitting around a low-lit dining table. Laughter curling in the air like steam off the rim of a glass. My husband's hand rested on my thigh under the tablecloth, but it wasn't possessive. It was grounding. Across from us, her husband told some story that made mine laugh, and I couldn't help but watch the curve of her mouth when she smiled. Something flickered, a look, a pause that lingered a little too long. I met her eyes just briefly, and her lips curled into something unreadable. Was it curiosity, amusement, or recognition of what was already in the room, but hadn't yet been spoken aloud? Later, in the soft golden light of the hallway, the four of us stood too close. The conversation had dissolved into touches. A joking nudge, a hand brushing too low on a back, a shoulder squeeze that held a little too long. It should have felt awkward, but it didn't. It was her husband who moved first, his hand warm and confident, resting at the small of my back as he leaned in to pour another drink over my shoulder. He murmured something that I didn't even catch because my heart was suddenly too loud in my ears. And across from us, my husband was laughing with her, fingers tracing idle circles on her bare wrist as if it were the most natural thing in the world. We weren't saying what was happening, but it was happening. There was a moment, tiny, maybe 2 seconds, when her husband looked at me, and my husband looked at her, and no one said a word. That silence hung like a held breath, suspended and electric. I don't know who took the first real step, who crossed the final line of touch, of closeness, of permission, but I remember the feeling. I stood in front of the mirror hours later, watching a reflection I never expected. I saw myself caught in a moment so intense, so surreal, it barely felt like mine. Her husband was behind me. My own was across from me, lips pressed to the soft rise of her stomach. And in that strange, shimmering reflection, I realized I had never felt this alive. They say love matures, softens, settles into something quieter. For a while, I believed that my husband and I had been together for nearly a decade. A beautiful, stable love. We shared inside jokes, finished each other's thoughts, made Saturday pancakes with quiet efficiency. But somewhere in that comfort, desire had doled into routine. Not lost, just muffled. We didn't fight. We just stopped reaching, and then there were them. We met by chance, a neighborhood dinner, a few shared glances, easy conversation. She had this bold laugh that filled the room. And he had a calm, focused way of looking at people when they spoke. They were magnetic together, not perfect, but alive. The kind of couple that flirted across a room and still found excuses to touch each other's hands like teenagers. My husband noticed, too. I caught him watching them more than once, eyes tracing the way she leaned into her man's touch. The way she laughed freely, a little too freely maybe. But he said nothing. Neither did I. Until the wine came, and the conversation turned. It started subtly, sharing a story that dipped into the suggestive, a glance that lingered too long. She complimented my dress, but her hand brushed my bare shoulder, her fingertips light, curious. My husband saw it. He didn't look away. Her husband noticed, too. The air shifted, and none of us backed down. That night unfolded like a dream. Not for what we did, but what we didn't do, what we hinted at. The way her husband watched me when I reached for my glass. The way my own husband looked at her legs when she crossed them slowly. There were unspoken truths simmering just beneath the surface. We all wanted, but want is complicated. Later, alone with my husband. We didn't speak much. He lay beside me, hand on my thigh, but not moving. I turned toward him in the dark, heart pounding. Did you feel it too? I asked. He paused and whispered, yes. The next time we saw them, something had shifted. No more polite distance. No more safe topics. There were touches, quiet admissions, smiles that held secrets. But it was the mirrors that told the truth. That night, watching our reflections tangle into something unrecognizable, I realized this wasn't about escape. It wasn't betrayal. It was a kind of coming home to a part of ourselves we'd forgotten. And we weren't alone in it. We were all unraveling together. And the line we crossed, we hadn't even begun to understand it yet. It was supposed to be harmless. Another dinner, another bottle of red, another night of too close conversations and almost accidental touches. But nothing about it felt harmless anymore. Temptation had crept in like smoke through a cracked window. And now it hung between us, thick and invisible, making it hard to breathe. She was wearing something soft and off the shoulder, the kind of dress that looked effortless, but designed to tease. My husband noticed. I saw it in the way he looked at her, a flicker of heat he didn't bother hiding, and I hated how much I liked seeing it. Her husband, on the other hand, had started touching me more openly, guiding me gently by the waist when I passed him in the kitchen, fingers brushing the inside of my wrist when he handed me a drink. I should have pulled away. I didn't. Then came the moment that cracked something open. We were playing a game, one of those silly never have I ever kind meant to stir laughter. But the questions had started turning. Never have I ever kissed someone else's spouse. Silence. Her eyes locked on mine. A long knowing look. I felt my husband shift beside me. My chest tightened. I guess that means we all drink, she said, her voice slow, teasing but sharp. Laughter followed, but it was nervous, edged with truth. We were exposed now. No more pretending we weren't each imagining things we hadn't yet done. Later, when I stood in the hallway alone, trying to catch my breath, her husband followed. You okay? He asked, his voice close. The kind that brushes the skin before the words even land. I nodded too fast. Yeah, just needed a minute. He stepped closer. I didn't move. You ever think about it? He asked quietly. What it would feel like if we stopped pretending. My heart thundered. And from across the hallway, I saw her watching us. But she wasn't angry. She was smiling. So was my husband standing just behind her. Something was going to happen. We had already passed the point of no return. The storm had rolled in faster than expected, thunder low and rumbling outside, rain streaking the windows like soft fingers across glass. Inside, the lights were dimmed, the music quieter, the others momentarily gone. He and I were alone, not by accident. I stood in the kitchen, pretending to refill my glass, though I hadn't taken a sip in minutes. My hands trembled slightly, more from anticipation than nerves. I could feel him before I saw him, the shift in the air, the warmth of his presence as he stepped behind me. You always hold your breath when I walk into a room, he said softly. I let out a shaky laugh. Do I? He didn't answer, just moved closer, not touching me, but close enough that I felt the heat of his chest at my back. The slow inhale and exhale that matched the thunder outside. We shouldn't, I whispered. He nodded against the silence. I know, but neither of us moved away. Across the house, I could hear their laughter, the sound of wine being poured. But here, in this cocoon of quiet, everything else disappeared. He leaned in slowly, not to kiss, but to speak, lips near my ear. I think about you more than I should, he said. The way you look at him. I want to know what that feels like. I want you to look at me like that. I turned to face him, our eyes locking, my breath hitched. Outside, lightning lit up the room for a split second, and in that flash, I saw it. Raw, unfiltered longing written all over his face. He reached up, brushed a damp strand of hair from my cheek. The touch was gentle, reverent, and then a voice, hers, from the hallway. Are you two okay in there? We jumped apart, but not fast enough. She stood in the doorway watching, calm, unbothered, almost expectant. And then just behind her, my husband appeared. No one spoke. No one moved. The tension cracked like the storm outside. And then she said, smiling softly, I think it's time. The room had gone silent. Her words, "I think it's time," hung in the air like the final chord of a song no one dared to end. We all stood there, four people bound together by something we couldn't name yet. The rain outside tapped steadily against the windows, almost like a countdown. I glanced at my husband. He didn't look shocked. He looked ready. She stepped forward first, barefoot on the polished floor, her presence like gravity, pulling us towards something we'd circled for too long. Her hand reached for mine, fingers lacing gently. Not possessive, not forceful, just open. "You don't have to be afraid," she said softly, her thumb grazing over my knuckles. "We're not here to break anything. We're here to feel something real." I wanted to speak but my throat caught because deep down I already had, and then her husband turned to my husband. "You should tell her," he said. Everything stilled. "Tell me what?" My husband looked at me then, guilt flickering behind his eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he said. "It started weeks ago. I didn't plan it, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. Her. My chest constricted. A sharp bright pain cracked through the haze of desire. But before I could pull away, she squeezed my hand tighter. "And I've thought about you," she said. "Longer than I should admit." The room tilted. I looked between them, their honesty laid bare. No shame, just a raw, terrifying kind of truth. I turned to her husband. "Did you know?" He nodded once. I did, and I watched it happen. I wanted to hate it. He stepped closer, eyes locked on mine, but instead I started wondering what it would be like to touch you. My heart thundered. It should have felt like betrayal. Instead, it felt like release. The kind of truth that cracked something open and let the light pour in. I exhaled long, slow, and certain. "I want to stop pretending," I whispered. "I want all of it out in the open." We were standing in a square of confession, want, and fragile permission. No one moved. Everyone waited, and then the lights flickered. A sudden crash of thunder shook the windows, and just like that, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed us whole. A breath, a touch, a choice. Everything was about to change. The lights flicked back on with a loud click, the sudden glow washing over four faces heavy with emotion. No one moved right away. The storm outside had begun to ease, but inside something much more dangerous had broken open. "I didn't come here to fall for anyone," I said, my voice shaking. "I just wanted to feel something." My husband stepped forward, eyes red but locked on mine. "You were slipping away. I saw it. I felt it. And I didn't know how to reach you anymore." He gestured to the others. "But this, whatever it's turning into, it brought you back to life. I saw it. I see you again." The air vibrated with tension. Her husband clenched his jaw, then finally spoke. "So, where does that leave us?" He looked at all of us in turn. "Because we can't keep circling this like it's a game. It's not. This is real. Too real." Her hand slipped out of mine as she walked across the room, eyes bright with something between anger and need. I didn't mean to want her or him, but I did, and I still do. She looked at her husband, then at mine. "I'm tired of hiding it." For a moment, no one said a word. The silence stretched like a held breath. Then I turned toward her. "What if we stop pretending this is about mistakes and start admitting it's about choice?" It was bold. Too bold maybe, but the words were already out there. Her husband exhaled harshly. "So what? We just rewrite the rules and hope no one gets hurt." My husband's voice was quieter, steadier. "People get hurt when we lie. When we stay in things just because we're afraid to say what we want." He looked at me. "I want you still always, but I also can't pretend that something hasn't shifted." The truth hung between us, fragile and fierce. She stepped closer to me slowly, searching my face for hesitation. Do you still want me? She asked, not coy, not playful, just honest. I nodded. Yes. Her husband looked at mine. Something silent passing between them. Not permission, not competition, but understanding. And then, the boldest decision of the night, he said quietly, then let's stop tearing ourselves apart, trying to be what we were. Let's choose what we are now. My breath caught. It wasn't closure in the way we knew it. It was a new beginning, tangled and uncertain, but real. The storm had passed, but something far more powerful was just beginning. The night had quieted. The storm had passed, leaving the air still, heavy with everything we'd said and everything we hadn't needed to. We weren't the same four people who had walked into that evening. We were softer, stripped down, and somehow more whole. The fire crackled low in the living room. One by one, the tensions melted, not with grand apologies, but with touch. A hand on his shoulder, a gentle smile across the room. The kind of closeness that doesn't beg for permission because it's already been given. She sat beside me on the couch, her fingers brushing lightly over mine. No electricity this time, just warmth. Familiar, real. I didn't expect this, she said quietly. Not the feelings, not the depth, not you. I turned to her, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Neither did I, but I think it was always there. We just finally let ourselves see it. Across the room, our husbands spoke in hushed tones, leaning close, their shoulders nearly touching. Whatever jealousy or confusion had been there earlier had softened into something else. Mutual respect, quiet intimacy, a recognition that love doesn't always follow old blueprints. My husband looked over at me. Really looked the way he hadn't in years. I never stopped loving you, he said. But this opened something up between us, and I think it saved us. She reached for her husband's hand, pulled him into our small circle. We weren't tangled anymore. We were joined, not in chaos, but in choice. That night didn't end with one couple retreating while the others whispered in secret. It ended with laughter over blankets on the floor, with wine still half full in glasses, with tired heads resting on shoulders and soft hands tracing slow, sleepy lines on skin. There were no labels, no rules, just us, connected by truth, by firelight, by the courage to admit what we needed and the tenderness to accept it in return. As the early morning light began to edge across the sky, I lay between them, her fingers entwined with mine, his hand resting over my heart. And I realized something that surprised me. This wasn't about breaking vows. It was about renewing them in ways we never knew we could. Love didn't shatter. It expanded. And that somehow made it even stronger.